Hi folks, I'm Jesse Elaine, and today we're going to wrap up the video series entitled How to Improvise for Guitar. This particular series we've covered things such as chord playing, line playing, and now we're going to dive into something that's very important for the improvising musician to know, and it's called motif playing. A motif in music is something that has a recognizable rhythmic and harmonic component, as well as melodic, I should say, component. And what it does is it allows the listener's ear to catch on to something that we're playing or using in our composing or improvising. In our case, we're going to deal with melodic motif that can be played over our C major sequence that we've been using. And this particular line is very simple, but it has a distinct rhythmic character and a distinct melodic pattern. So I'll play it for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. A little closer up. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. So what we've done is we've thought about something very simple that we can use in various ways over C major. Remember, we're just playing over C major here. My chord is C major 7th. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a piece of paper with some writing on it. And I want you to pause the video and copy it down for yourself. And then we'll come back in just a moment. Okay, so hopefully you copied that down because it's going to be really difficult to follow along if you didn't. So we have 7 different transpositions of the exact same melodic line or motif that we're using. The first one starts on an F, then we go down by a third to D, then the next one we go down by a third to B, continue down by a third to G, starting then on E, starting then on C, starting then on A. By the time we get to A, if we would go down another third, we'd be back to where we started. So that's a lesson in itself. Playing a melodic line, you can play them from descending thirds. Now, these aren't necessarily just major thirds, minor thirds. They're combinations of those two based on the scale pattern of the scale we're using, or the scale formula, I should say. So we start off with our F, and this is our line, 1 and 2. I'm going to bring it down to D, down to B now, down to G, down to E, down to C, and then down to A. You can see how some of those get a little bit low. So what we're going to do is at the halfway point when we get to that G, we're going to flip everything up an octave, okay? So this is an important technique for you to learn as a guitarist, because when you play lines like this, you don't want to just keep descending them because they theoretically work that way on paper. If they don't work in reality, in musical terms, according to what sounds good with your ear, right? We are playing music here, so ear is very important. If it doesn't sound good like that, then think about playing it another way. And usually when you're getting that low, down on the 6th string, probably not that good of a place to hang out for too long, especially when you're playing with a bass player or even pianist. So we're going to play over our sequence now, and I'm just going to use this same exact motif throughout. I'm going to flip up to the octave point where you see the G on the paper. Why don't you put a star on the E, noting that you're going to go up, put a star, and then put an 8 VA. 8 VA stands for octave, so octave higher at least. So what we're going to do now is we're going to play over this melodic the music sequence here with this melodic pattern motif. So let's hear what it sounds like. 110 beats per minute. B. last one on the low part, up an octave, going up now. Go down an octave now. Add in some chords. Okay, so that's one way to practice the transposition of melodic motifs such as the one we came up with. Our melodic motif is very simple, but it doesn't necessarily have to be complex. One of the most famous motifs I can think of is the introduction to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the movement that everybody knows from dun 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 dun. That's a very, very strong and simple but recognizable melodic motif. So we're just doing the same thing but in a different context here. We're transposing it by thirds. You can transpose motifs by other intervals, but thirds tend to work pretty reliably because they are consonant intervals typically with the chord. But again, we're starting from all different notes. We're starting from every note of the scale. So even though we've got C, E, G, B as our chord tones we're playing over, we're starting from D, we're starting from F, we're starting from A. Everything is in there. So that's one cool thing about using transposition of melodic motif, is that you will hit those other chord tones, which you might not necessarily hit otherwise. It's a different way of thinking, but what it will do is it will allow you to really keep some adhesion between your more free improvised lines and your motifs, which are more of a grounding device in improvisation. I like to think of them that way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use those melodic motifs, kind of sprinkle them in there where I feel they fit, but throw it with some other types of free, not free, but, you know, creative, right from on the spot improvisation. So here it goes. Okay, so I was trying to use those sparingly, but enough so that you could really feel like that was something that you had heard before as a listener and that you were still recognizing again and again. But it wasn't so blatant that it felt like I was doing it the whole time, yet it wasn't so sparse that it felt like, did I hear that before? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. No, who cares? It was in there enough times to really feel like it had some kind of anchoring to something else you had previously heard, but was still in there, not so much that it was annoying or repetitive. So try to use some melodic motifs. Try to come up with your own melodic motifs based on the C major scale. That's exactly what I did there. There's no chromaticism in that, although chromaticism could probably give it some more character. But you have to be careful with other things like clashing and chord tones and stuff. So use the scale for now. Get creative though, and try to have fun. And let me know if you have any questions. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.